Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the SandStorm Gold third quarter conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, please press star, then the number 2. Mr. Harris, you may begin your conference.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's conference call. With me today is SandStorm's President and CEO, Nolan Watson, our CFO, Irfan Kazemi, and our Senior Executive Vice President, David Oram. Please be aware that some of the commentary on today's call may contain forward-looking statements. There can be no assurance that forward-looking statements will prove to be accurate, as actual results and future events could differ materially from those anticipated in such statements. For those of you who have dialed into the conference call and would like to follow along with the slides that we have prepared, you can find those slides on the website. I will now pass the call over to Nolan for his third quarter comments.
Thanks, Denver. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. I am aware that there are a number of other precious metals companies who have just released their earnings and are having investor calls this morning, so I'll be concise on this call. We are again pleased that we've had another solid quarter, which included operating cash flow of just over $10 million. And as I mentioned on the last quarterly call, we now have made payments due to our partners for our various streams and royalties, and all of the payments that we had to make have been made, and therefore 100% of this operating cash flow is now free cash flow. This cash flow, combined with the liquidation of a few smaller non-core investments subsequent to September 30th, means we're sitting here today with zero debt and over $22 million of cash on hand. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to turn this call over to Irfan Kazemi, our CFO, to walk through the quarterly results, and then to David Oram, who will provide a couple of other asset-related updates. Normally on these calls, I take the time to answer commonly asked questions from investors. There's one question, however, that I believe is top of mind for all investors, which I would like to take a couple of minutes to answer in detail before I hand the call over to Irfan. Effectively, that question is, with equity flowing much more easily to mining companies, do we think that we can continue to easily purchase streams and royalties? And more specifically, do we think that we will be purchasing any streams or royalties in the next 6 months? I think that this is a relevant question because there's no doubt that the equity capital markets are working again, and capital is once again flowing to mining companies. One of the natural implications of this is that companies that were in significant distress a year ago are more often than not no longer in distress. And therefore, the deep value, deeply distressed streaming deals, the type that we have seen over the past year, that were meant to fix other companies' balance sheets, they are now hard to come by. At the same time, this also means that mining companies that were previously in hibernation are now once again pushing their assets forward, including drilling, various studies, permitting, etc. And in many cases, these companies are not able to raise 100% of the capital required to build such projects solely through equity. As a result, although the ability to purchase distressed royalties has decreased over the past 6 months, the ability to invest in development projects is very much a live opportunity for SandStorm. As some of you may remember, during our last quarterly call, I mentioned that one of the reasons we had raised equity during the year was because of a specific opportunity that we were working on and for which we were in active due diligence on. Although that due diligence process resulted in us shying away from the opportunity, that opportunity has been replaced by a couple of other potential material opportunities on development projects for which we are now doing due diligence. And time will tell if these are transactions that make sense for us to complete. In addition, we are still finding in this environment that purchasing small portfolios of royalties is a live opportunity, and we're currently working on a couple of such transactions. Each individual purchase may seem immaterial, but this strategy, taken as a whole, is an important one to our company. Over the next few months, depending on which portfolios we're able to purchase, I would expect for us to have acquired between 3 and 13 new royalties for fairly immaterial amounts of consideration. In this phase of the market cycle, we're still finding selective value, and we're looking forward to being able to continue to round out our current portfolio with even more diversification. From a high-level perspective, our business is one where at the bottom of the cycle, we should be willing to back up the truck and buy as many intelligent things as we can, and at the top of the cycle, we should sit on our hands and accumulate cash and get ready for the next bottom of the cycle. Today, I feel we're somewhere in the middle, and therefore should focus on selectively, carefully, and discerningly adding to our portfolio, and that's what we're working on doing now. As you can see, based on these quarterly results, our balance sheet continues to build cash at a rapid pace. We've gone from being materially in debt a year ago to being debt-free with a strong and growing cash balance. We're in a good position and prepared to add to our already diverse portfolio of streams and royalties. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Irfan to walk through the financial results in detail. Irfan.
Thanks, Nolan. The story of the gold mining sector in 2016 has been one of rising metal prices, increasing margins, and greater investment activity on the ground. SandStorm's financial results in the third quarter and over the first 9 months of this year have been consistent with that narrative, resulting in a nice growth trend. For those of you following along with the slides, I'd like to direct your attention to slide 3. There you can find what I'm referring to in chart form. In chart on the left-hand side, you will notice that SandStorm's gold equivalent ounces have risen from less than 9,000 gold equivalent ounces in Q4 of last year to over 12,500 ounces in Q3. When you add up the production during the first 3 quarters of 2016, SandStorm has recorded close to 36,500 attributable gold equivalent ounces, and as a result, we have further narrowed our outlook for the full year to between 47,000 and 50,000 gold equivalent ounces. We're confident that we'll meet or exceed that range. As far as the average selling price for the ounces sold in Q3, we've seen a nice uptrend from what was an all-time low in Q4 at just over $1,100 per ounce, rising to $1,336 per ounce on average in the third quarter, which you can see in the chart on the right side of the slide. With the gold price working in our favor and our average cash costs coming in at $255 per ounce, our cash operating margins were at a 3-year high at $1,081 per ounce. The rising trend in the gold price that I just described, together with the growth in our gold ounces sold, have led to a revenue increase of close to 70% since Q4 2015, and approximately 40% compared to Q3 of 2015. I'd like to take a few moments to provide a breakdown of our $16.8 million revenue figure. You will find supporting charts on slide 4. Over 70% of our revenue was generated from operations in North America during the period, with almost 50% coming from mines in Canada. As you can see in the illustration, the current political risk profile of SandStorm is certainly one of our relative strengths. Outside of North America, about 17% of the stream and royalty revenue was generated from South American operations, and the other 11% were from assets located in Australia and West Africa. For those of you who are not aware, the new streams that have bolstered our production and revenue in 2016 are the silver and copper streams from Yamana and the Karma Gold stream from Endeavour Mining. My last point on revenue is to highlight the breakdown by commodity, in which you can see reflected in the pie chart on the right-hand side of slide 4, showing that 80% of our revenue came from precious metals and diamonds, with the remainder being attributable to base metal assets. Moving on to cash flow from operations in slide 5. Our cash flow was again strong during Q3, with over $10.3 million being generated, bringing the total during the first 9 months of 2016 to approximately $29 million. This cash flow, together with non-core asset sales and the recent equity financing that we completed in July, have enabled us to completely repay amounts that were drawn on our credit facility and accumulate a cash balance of over $20 million as of today. We're in a great position to continue executing on streams and royalty acquisitions with over $130 million in available capital. Lastly, investors have understandably taken notice of our net income figures this year. Well, we had another good quarter with $6.9 million in net income, largely driven by the revaluation of the company's investments and a decrease in depletion expense. Our debt and equity investments are up to over $90 million in value, and we are actively pursuing monetization efforts to convert some of these instruments to cash. As a company, I feel that we're in an excellent position to execute on the opportunities as they arise, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to continue to innovate and grow the business in a way that will bring value to shareholders. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Irfan. Just a brief asset update today. Starting with Yamana, they had a busy quarter of updates on exploration and construction at its Cerro Moro project. I'm going to start with Chapada, which we hold the copper stream on. This asset is now being viewed by Yamana as more of a larger district play than previously, and they've begun applying a more regional exploration program. However, they are still having success very near the existing main Chapada pit. They're drilling at Sucupira, a deposit immediately to the north of the Chapada main pit, is supporting mineral resource growth with some of their highest copper grades to date. Even drilling below the existing pit has borne fruit. Grades higher than current head grade have been encountered just outside the current pit boundaries. Further away at the Formiga target, located 15 kilometers to the northeast, Yamana is finding copper-gold mineralization in a similar geometry and lithology to Sucupira. Further drilling is planned to follow up on this target and at least 4 other regional targets. The exploration budget for Chapada is $6 million for this year, and more results are expected before the end of 2016. At Guacamayo, there appears to be a lot of success in finding new oxide targets adjacent to the existing open pit at Cerro Condor and Potentiales. Yamana is optimistic this year's drill results will add to the current oxide resource. Also, 2 kilometers northwest of the QDD main pit, they are hopeful that the newly discovered Las Vacas target will develop into an additional oxide ore deposit. The budget for exploration at Guacamayo has been increased to $7.5 million for 2016, and more results are expected this year. And you will recall that we do own a royalty on the entire property at Guacamayo. Moving on to the progress of development at Cerro Moro. Yamana is moving full steam ahead. They feel the project is ahead of schedule in the areas of underground development, detail engineering, and process plant construction. Bulk earthworks were completed ahead of schedule, and the first concrete was poured in August. Even critical parts of the mill have arrived in Argentina already. Planned expenditures in 2016 is expected to be $53 million, and a balance of $224 million is to be spent in 2017 and 2018, with the bulk in 2017. Part of the spend will be used for exploration and to improve the current resource categorization. There's a lot of details of this that you can find on the Yamana website. I'm going to move on to Kirkland Lake and their Macassa mine, which we hold a royalty on the HM claim within that complex. Recent drill results point to an additional upside in this asset. A number of infill drill holes have produced some eye-watering gold assays and indicate further extension of the South Mine complex on that claim. Numerous high-grade intercepts have been reported with assay results up to 651 grams per ton gold over 3.8 meters. Kirkland Lake Management feels that these last sets of results indicate the deposit continues to the east. For further details, take a look at the Kirkland Lake website. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, the operator, and I think we'll begin the Q&A session.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Should you have a question, please press star followed by 1 on your touch-tone phone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt acknowledging your request, and your questions will be polled in the order they are received. If you are using a speakerphone, please lift the handset before pressing any keys. Again, as a reminder, should you have a question, please press star 1 on your touch-tone phone. One moment, please, for your first question. Thank you. Your first question comes from Robert Carlson, Janney Montgomery Scott. Robert, please go ahead.
Hey guys, just a real quick question. With the recent elections that we've had here, any thoughts how that might affect the gold market and SandStorm?
Well, I guess it has a little bit. Gold's fallen off over the last couple of days since Trump got elected. I don't think that was the reaction to gold most people would have expected to a Trump victory, but nonetheless it's happened. Longer term, it's too challenging to tell candidly. If I had to take a wild guess, and that's all it is, I would guess that if he is able to get the economy going, which is what the stock market appears to be betting on today and yesterday, that inflation will come back, and I think inflation coming back would be a good thing for gold over the longer term, but yet to be determined.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, should you like to ask a question on the webcast, or you may press star 1 on your touch-tone phone. Your next question comes from John Tumazos. John Tumazos, Very Independent Research. John, please go ahead. John, your line is open.
What years do you think Yamana would increase output at Chapada in line with the recent better drilling? And what years do you think Kirkland Lake would have a new shaft to get the tons per day up at Macassa and develop these zones on the HM claims that are a little distance from the existing shaft?
Well, John, I don't know. That's a little bit of a tricky question. They've been talking about an expansion at Chapada. They were a little bit more active on that a couple of years ago in terms of looking at expansion. There are a number of things that they can do there. There are a couple of bottlenecks to the whole process at Chapada. Certainly, I think the mill as it sits today could do with some additional retention time within the existing float cells of just the ore that they're reporting to today. So I think an extension of the flotation system at the mill is going to be critical to any sort of expansions that they have at Chapada. So we don't know exactly what that timing is for that is. I know Yamana is obviously very aware of that issue, and they're figuring out how to address it and what the best way to plan for that is. Once that issue is addressed, I think it's a matter of really how things like Sucupira are accessed, and even additionally how some of these more regional targets that are pretty prospective. That was one of the things that we saw going into the Chapada asset that we're very pleased that Yamana is following up on, is that very prospective regional basis to what's happening in the Chapada district. So it's difficult to say. I would think if they get some if this run in copper progresses and they maintain a solid gold price, that certainly puts them in a much better situation to be able to figure out how to finance those expansions at the mill and ramping up open pit mining production. In regards to Macassa and at Kirkland Lake, that's tricky to say. We're certainly not as close to the management either as we are at the Yamana management. That's the issue that I don't really feel I'm ready to jump in on. I do know that they certainly have been figuring out how to improve operations. It's been a big learning curve, I think, for everybody who's new to that operation to get it up and going and running as efficiently as it is today. So I certainly applaud them for that. We're very hopeful about that HM claim and how much it seems to be contributing to their future life of mine plans. So we just have to wait and see how that develops.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as a final reminder, you may ask your questions via the webcast or press star 1 on your touch-tone phone. Your next question comes from Robert Carlson, Janney Montgomery Scott. Robert, please go ahead.
Could you expand a little bit more on Mariana? It seems like they're putting out some pretty good press releases, and what the time frame might be before we see some production there.
Yeah, so that would be the Hod Maden asset that we have a 2% royalty on in Turkey. The project operator is a company called Lidya Maden Çelik, which is a large Turkish conglomerate, and so Lidya is currently in the process of doing various detailed studies with a view of putting a pre-feasibility study out in Q2 of 2017. They are doing quite a bit of infill drilling for the purpose of that pre-feasibility study. I don't have a good view as to when they're going to expand that exploration program to outside of the main ore body into the larger property. There's actually quite a large land package there and lots of prospectivity for exploration upside. So I think the main catalyst on a pre-feasibility study coming out of Lidya will be Q2 next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further questions at this time. Please proceed.
All right. Well, thank you very much, operator, and thank you again, everyone, for calling in. And as usual, if you have any further questions, feel free to call us here at the office. Have a great day.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes your conference call for today. We thank you for participating and ask that you please disconnect your lines.